Hello and welcome to Higher Results, where business, workforce, and talent intersect. I'm Melody Reagan, CEO of Eye to Eye Workforce, and I'm your host. Talent is at the core of every business and organization, and on Higher Results, we'll be exploring all things HR throughout the life cycle of a worker, from hiring to performance management to development, all the way through to retirement and, yes, even terminations. From all perspectives, we'll be exploring HR and the talent in your organization, as well as how to better manage your career. We're happy to provide you with tips and tools and insights so that you can have a high-performing organization and a top-notch career. Higher Results airs every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. Mark it on your calendar. We're on IPTV now, and you can see us on Facebook.com/Innovation Pavilion, as well as Facebook.com/Higher Results. If you miss an episode, no worries. You can find that past episode on IP Now TV, as well as an Eye to Eye Workforce. And on Eye to Eye Workforce, you can also download podcasts that you can listen to while you're driving. We do hope you'll join us regularly. And if you have any questions, let us know on Eye to Eye Workforce. And in fact, today we're going to be answering one of the questions we've received. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's show is HR Essentials, the Yearlong Calendar. HR has critical and important deadlines all year long. And I know we tend to think that HR is about compliance. Well, it is. It's so much more, but you have to start with the fundamentals of compliance. And what I find interesting about HR is that very fine balance between handling compliance as well as ensuring that an organization has a top performing workforce at all levels. So it's more than pure compliance, and putting together a year-long calendar is a great place to start. Now, today I'm very excited to introduce you to one of our guests that I get to work with on a regular basis and who I have worked with for years. She's quite brilliant. Welcome to the show, Kathryn Barker. She's a senior business partner with Eye to Eye Workforce, and she goes by Kat. So, Kat, welcome, and I'd love for us to start with tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Thank you so much, Melody. It's a pleasure to be on the show, and I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to share this. So my background, I've been in HR. I tell people 35 years and that I started when I was 2, but in any event, I've been an HR generalist for a very long time and have worked in high-tech firms all over the world, as well as architectural firms, education, government. So I've got a very broad background and view from the HR side of the world, as well as the business side of the world.
Fantastic. And you know what, Kat, you have a very broad industry background and you've worked globally. Would you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So as I said, I've worked in different types of environments, primarily in technology, but also education. But in my technology background, I have traveled all over the world, including China and Europe, and hiring folks that are in the tech field and also HR professionals internationally.
And you know what, I'm just going to throw in there, you also have worked for government. So you
Yes.
have that broad background, and you have also worked with nonprofits. So you get to see HR from a variety of different perspectives and a variety of different budgets. So before we jump in, I have one little question for you today. What would you say is one of the hardest things about being an HR leader? You know, in all the years of experience that you've had, what's one of the hardest things about being an HR leader?
Probably not taking the issues home with you, because the day can wear on you and you feel like you need to solve all of the problems of the world, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just have to say, hey, I've done the best that I can with the information that I have, and give yourself a break.
You know what? Fair enough. And it is all about the people, isn't it?
It definitely is.
Fantastic. Well, you know what, Kat, we are going to go ahead and we are going to jump in on the HR calendar that we put together at Eye to Eye Workforce and take everybody through. We're going to do a little 12-month tour. Okay, HR Essentials, the year-long calendar. On Higher Results, we're going to have a regular column, if you will, our topical area called HR Essentials, and we're going to be giving you tools and tips that you can use throughout the year to help you have compliance as well as build that workforce that's going to be a powerhouse for you in achieving all of your goals and growing your organization and your business. So what we've put together here is we have a general calendar that goes all year long. We have some specifics to 2018. I know it's already March, but we're going to go back to January and give you that full year view. I want you to note this is just a starter calendar. We're trying to cover the things that matter from a compliance perspective and also get you engaging with your organization and your workforce. There are other common things that you may have that are not in this calendar, like an employee picnic, a holiday. You may want to come in and you may be doing holiday parties in December. Whatever you have going on, or you might have specific groups that you have get together and review the company culture at a certain level or give feedback to each other. Or the other thing that we don't have clearly noted at this moment are your performance reviews. Whatever cycle you want to put your performance reviews on, please make sure that you add them to this calendar. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. Let's start with January.
Fantastic, Melody. Okay. The first item is, of course, assessing your job description's content. And the reason that that seems natural there is because at the end of the year and the beginning of the year are probably our busiest times, the last 3 months, the first 3 months, and you've probably just come off of a performance management cycle. In fact, many companies do an end of year, what they call focal review process. So that's a perfect time to take a look at our job descriptions to make sure that the content is correct and that's accurately reflective of what the employee's duties are. We would like it to be accurate for several reasons. One, none the least of which would be for our employees to make sure that their job description is exactly what they're doing. We also want to assess for whether they're an exempt from overtime or non-exempt from overtime employee. And in the event that we need to fill that position or a similar position, we would want to make sure that the job description is accurate and reflects the knowledge, skills, and abilities for that position. And we would hate for an audit to happen, but if an audit did happen by a government agency, it's nice to make sure that we have the job description match with the actual position. Moving along, we would recommend auditing your I-9 forms and documentation. I say this because the documentation is critical from the standpoint that if you have documents supporting that a person is eligible to work in the United States, some of those documents may have an expiration date, and this is a great time to take a look and make sure that you have all the current documents or have at least contacted your employees to get those current documents. You'll want to, at this time, post and ensure communication of any company-paid holidays coming up for the next year. This is a great time to let your employees know so they can start planning for 2018. If you have gone through an open enrollment process in the last 3 months of 2017, then you are probably commencing new benefits as of January 1. You'll want to be prepared with any websites or any information, maybe extra cards for the employees, because they will be asking you to schedule dentist appointments, etc. And you'll want to make sure that you have all the information available either through your broker or your insurance plans at your fingertips, because as many of us know, the phone calls come in pretty heavily at the beginning of the year. I'm going to mention Perform HR Audit because it's really key that you're taking a look at all of your HR functions and all of your competencies, making sure that everything that you have is in order, basically keeping your house in order. We at Eye to Eye have provided an HR checklist for you off of our website. It's 8 pages, very comprehensive, and we would direct you to that document as kind of a basis for performing that HR audit. We'll mention this HR audit throughout the year because it's really important that you stay on top of your HR practices. January 28th is Data Privacy Day. And Data Privacy Day is an international effort. It's held annually, of course, on January 28th, to create awareness about the importance of respecting employee privacy, safeguarding data, and enabling trust. The end of January, January 31st, is a significant day for several reasons. First would be, of course, filing your unemployment tax return, IRS Form 940. The 31st is also the date that you need to distribute your employees' W-2s and any 1099 miscellaneous forms to your contractors. And also on the 31st of January, relative to the Affordable Care Act, employer-provided health coverage IRS forms 1095B and 1095C need to be provided to your employees. There is an extended deadline for March 2nd, but we would strongly encourage you to get these completed by the end of January. At the bottom of the page, on a regular basis, we would emphasize that this is a great opportunity for you to partner with your businesses and attend any key business operations and staff meetings. Additionally, this is a great time to analyze your monthly KPIs or metrics, key performance indicators around recruitment, any safety and attrition. It's also a good time to take a look at your budget each month, make sure that you're on track. And last but not least, and a very important thing, is make sure you disperse those employee paychecks. If you're passing those out physically, this is a very key thing because we want to keep our employees happy. February. All right. So we'll want to perform an annual refresher for legal training for employees and managers. And what I'm coming up with right now is anti-harassment, anti-bullying training. It's a really good practice for businesses to offer that training once a year. Some states require it. We don't necessarily do that in Colorado, but I think it's a good practice. It's also a great time to do any kind of other trainings or certifications that are required and to track that. Make sure you have your employees sign off that they attended the training.
Yeah, by the way, one of them that I just want to put in here, we do like lunch and learns for supervisors, those that are managing others. What are do's and don'ts around recruiting? How do you handle performance feedback? And so on and so forth. This is a great opportunity to make sure everybody is in alignment and knows the policies of the companies as they're moving forward.
Good points. Very good points, Melody. This is also a good time to renew any vendor contracts, which might include staffing agencies, any training facilitators, legal services, payroll, third-party administrators, that type of thing. Also, it's a good time to ensure all federal and state regulated employee rights bulletins are up to date and posted. You need to make sure you have those required postings up. You'll want to post the OSHA 300A summary report for the prior year, and you're going to want to post it between February 1st and April 30th. This is a required mandated time. You'll maintain a calendar during the year that records all reportable injuries and illnesses, and these will be recorded and then posted on this log, this 300-day summary report at the February 1st time. On February 15th, you'll be required to request any new W-4 from exempt employees wishing to continue their status. This is the time to do that. And then on the 28th, relative to the Affordable Care Act, the employer-provided health care coverage, you'll file the IRS forms 1094B, 95B, 1094C, and 1095C, and you'll file these with the IRS. March 31st is your deadline if you're filing electronically. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you'll have those other regular meetings. Moving into March, you'll want to take a look at your audit and audit your hiring files, any personnel files, and benefits records. Remember that you'll want to keep your benefits records separate from your personnel files and your I-9. The benefits records, most notably because you've just gone through an open enrollment period, most likely, and you'll probably have some new forms. Want to make sure those are all in the records and reflected. You'll want to evaluate your HR operational budget during this time. Make sure you're on track. This is a last chance to submit any employees' flexible spending account claims from the prior year. Also, March, daylight savings time begins.
Painful. For the areas that have it, painful.
That is true because I believe Arizona does not. So thank you.
There are some, that's right.
That's right. And then March 2nd is National Employee Appreciation Day. This is a perfect time to go visit your Hallmark store and make sure you send a card letting those employees know how much you appreciate them, or take them to lunch, or bring them bagels or pizza or whatever. And on March 31st is the date for the EEO-1, which is Equal Employment Opportunity. And the EEO-1 report is due on March 31st. Moving into April, we'll want to report any prior fiscal year attrition findings and a remediation plan. And what this means to you is if you've got turnover, which most of us do, you'll want to find out what the cause is for that turnover and work with your leadership team to figure out any remediation plans like employee engagement or employee engagement surveys, that type of thing.
Good check-in.
Also, as I mentioned earlier, this is a good time quarterly to perform an HR audit, and I will refer you back to that 8-page document that we have on the I2I Workforce website. I think you'll find the document very helpful to guide your HR auditing activities. In April, let's not forget April 25th is the Administrative Professionals Day, and this is a great time to recognize your admin assistant or executive assistant. And right after that is April 26th for those who have the Take Your Daughter or Take Your Daughters and Sons to Work Day. This is the date that is nationally recognized in the U.S.
And it's a fun thing to do. Just make sure that you're prepared for it work-wise.
Exactly. And some employers may not be set up to do that, but most should. In May is when you'll submit your affirmative action plan for the new plan year. And you'll want to think about, as a result of that remediation plan that we talked about in April, consider an employee engagement survey to focus on turnover issues that your employees may be having, or things that may be driving some of your metrics.
By the way, some people or some organizations actually refer to this as they might go out and do some stay interviews. We actually like the proactive perspective of let's have an employee engagement survey and get feedback from our employees.
That's absolutely true. Moving into June, great time to take a look at your I-9 forms and documentation again. We did that in January, but you really want to keep this current, because if there is ever an I-9 audit, you want to make sure you have your most current documents in there and everything's buttoned up. This is a great time to evaluate your HR operational budget, make sure you're on track, see if you've got any shortfalls or any areas that might need to be adjusted. And this is a great time to also take a deep dive into your metrics or your key performance indicators and report those out.
Yeah, you've been going through and looking at them each month, but now's the time to look and see if you have any month-over-month trends. Dig into them a little more deeply so that you're not at the end of the year going, what happened? You get to prepare in advance.
That's a very good point, Melody. And then July is a great time to, and many of you will say you need to do this, assess, evaluate, and modify your compensation and pay structures. And the reason we say that is with unemployment around 2% or less, you'll want to make sure that your compensation and your pay structures are competitive and that you pay competitive wages so you can attract and retain employees, the best employees.
And by the way, Kat, one thing I just want to share here, what you don't see in this calendar is we haven't listed performance reviews. What we have found with a lot of our clients is we're moving away from the formalized annual performance review. What we're doing is we're doing regular feedback. So consequently, compensation and that annual performance review are being decoupled. So at different times throughout the year, you unequivocally need to look at your compensation and pay structures to understand what you as an organization can afford, and also what the market is saying is competitive and how you're going to play in that market.
And that is so true, because it can slip away from you as you do decouple those things. So that's a great point. If you have a sales force in place, and probably most of you do, you'll want to establish and monitor the bonus incentive plans, make sure that everything's on track with the budget, and just feedback on that to your leadership and key managers. This is also a good time to take a look at your HR practices and do an HR audit. I'll refer you to that 8-page document again. It's a great way to make sure that all of your practices and everything related to HR is up to snuff. In August, this is a perfect time to start reevaluating and negotiating your benefit plans, because you'll want to start early to be able to get competitive rates from your insurance vendors. This is also an excellent time to start looking at workforce planning for the next year. I know probably a lot of you may think August is too soon, but I don't think you can plan soon enough, especially in this competitive environment. And while you're looking at workforce planning, this is a terrific time to also take a look at succession planning efforts. Have you identified your high potential employees for those critical positions that have been identified in your organization? Remember, they may not just be the management positions. They may be some subject matter experts that have some key data that would be very difficult to replace.
Excellent point, Kat. And one of the things to make a note, the reason that we put both of these planning exercises in August, if you look at the calendar, your first quarter and your last quarter of the year are intense. You have a lot of things that you have to get done. Workforce planning and succession planning requires a focus and a consideration. So for you to do it here and to work with your managers and leaders throughout the organization to make sure you're preparing for the future of the business, as you go into planning, which you'll be doing in the fourth quarter, you'll have your baseline documents to work with.
Excellent. All right, and in September, again, before everything goes crazy for the last 3 months of the year, this is an opportune time to review and update your employee handbook and make any adjustments to it that were either mandated by law or within your agency or your business. This is a great time to review any outdated employee rules, those types of things, and get approvals from management. And we think this is a great time to review it because it times up very nicely with the end of December and the dissemination of benefit programs, performance reviews, and it seems like a good time to go ahead, especially before it gets really crazy, and take a look at those key policies.
By the way, Kat, I love that because it really does give you the chance to do a deep dive. It could take quite a bit of time to get that employee handbook updated. And by doing it now, all you have to do at the end of the year before you go into your next calendar year is a little bit of tweaking.
Absolutely. And as you can see, October is very busy. This is when you'll select your benefit plans. The bids will probably have come back from all the vendors. This is a time that you'll need to evaluate your budget for the next year. And you'll want to start your next year's planning because you will have the benefit information. And unfortunately, most years, the rates tend to go up. This is a great time to assess your budget needs in terms of expenditures and any fiscal year budget allocations. And you want to line those up with your business strategies needs. Some things that you'll want to consider are training, your human resources information systems, and potentially implementing one, any legal expenses, enterprise resource planning systems, any hiring, workforce planning, and other operational expenses. Those are all things that you'll want to take into consideration as you put your budget together for the next year. Again, I'm going to remind you about perform the HR audit. We'll refer you to that 8-page document checklist that we have on the I2I Workforce site that you can use to help perform that audit. This is a great time also to work with your leadership to build an HR strategy for the next fiscal year. You're doing all kinds of planning. Now's the time to do it with your leadership team. And don't forget, October 16th is National Bosses Day.
Let's appreciate our bosses.
Absolutely. So November.
Oops, I went one too far. Coming back, November.
November, great time. We've selected our benefit plans, so let's communicate and commence open enrollment. We all know what that's about, depending upon what systems you have. If you have an electronic system, and hopefully you do, you can go through the open enrollment that way. You'll want to facilitate benefit plan offerings to employees, whether you want to do webinars like we're doing right now, or travel to any outside locations of your main office. This is a perfect time to establish holidays and send out an updated paid holiday calendar. This is the time that you'll work with your leadership on the next year's HR plan and strategic planning sessions. You'll update employee manuals and expectations. We talked a little bit about handbooks earlier, and this is a great time to really get them updated and get those expectations nailed down. And don't forget that November 4th, the daylight savings time ends. And here's our calendar, draft calendar, some dates to think about. Not every business has these dates. Obviously, depending upon the type of business that you have, you may observe all or maybe just a few of these.
And by the way, winter recess, a lot of firms do close down on December 26th to the 31st, so just an FYI. And I know these are things that we have to work through because knowing our holidays, who's going to have coverage, particularly if we are dual shifts or if we run 24 hours a day, whatever it is that you have to deal with by looking at your holidays, it also helps you understand what your staffing needs are.
Very good. And last but not least, we're in December. We want to facilitate those benefit plan offerings. We'll do benefit open enrollment, wrap them up, typically the first to potentially the second week in December. Most companies will wrap that up and finalize any employee handbook updates. Make sure you distribute those handbooks to the employees, whether you do it electronically or paper. You'll want to have a sign-off document to show that they did receive any updates. You'll post the payroll deadlines and pay date calendars for the next year because your employees will want to know. This is the time to submit any final flexible spending account requests. You'll want to work with your leadership to finalize your next year's HR strategic plan. You want to make sure that that's nailed down because, as you know, your leadership will drive your to-do list in HR. And you'll want to remind employees to submit any new W-4 forms if their withholdings have changed.
By the way, what comes through as you were going through the calendar, Kat, what we did is we talked about getting handbooks done earlier in your succession planning, but in your last 3 months, it's a very iterative process for you in finalizing your planning coming into the next year. We all know how budgeting and planning go, so the sooner you start, the better you're going to be and the stronger you're going to be coming into the new year.
Thank you.
Now, there's a few other things, Kat, if you wouldn't mind sharing that we don't have in the calendar, but depending on what you offer, that you do want to make sure gets into your calendar, here are a few extra things for you to consider.
That's right. And bonuses could be quarterly, they could be semi-annually, so you'll want to plug those in where appropriate. If you have any pension or 401k type plans, defined benefit, defined contribution, summary plan descriptions will need to be plugged in, as well as summaries of material modifications if you have any plan changes throughout the year. You'll do a summary annual report, and also you'll want to do a Form 5500, and there are extensions for those forms as well. But
and they definitely have dates depending on when your plan runs.
That is correct, and I would recommend that you work with your plan administration team to button those up. There are federal contractor requirements. The VETS 4212 form is due September 30th, and labor relations, LMRDA reports, LM1 through LM4, and others through LM30 as needed and based on your employer, your situation, whether or not you have labor relations.
Exactly. If you have labor relations or if you have unions. So here are a couple of extra things. And then if you do have a regular cycle for performance reviews, plug those into so that they're there. And don't forget to reevaluate your approach each year to performance reviews. Even though you've done it, the way that you do it each year coming forward may need to change. So with that, I'm going to come back over here and say hello to Kat so that we're together. Kat, one thing I'd like for us to end with before we go into a close is, we have people who ask us questions online, and I actually have someone who has asked me a couple of questions regarding the I-9. So here's the question that I was given is, how important is the filing of I-9s and how should they be filed?
That's a great question. So they are very important because if you're audited, there are fines associated not only to the company, but actually to the CEO and president of the company. So they have personal liability if they're not filed. And how they should be filed is absolutely separate from the personnel file and benefits files. You should have a separate folder or notebook that has the I-9s or a separate electronic file that is not commingled with your personnel documents.
Yeah, by the way, one of the critical ones that definitely we disregard, but we shouldn't, because that is something that you could have some pretty doggone serious, is the best way for me to say it, serious penalties that come with that. So in wrapping this today, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little swap here, is what I want to tell everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today on Higher Results. If you want to see a show every week, we are on facebook.com/Innovation Pavilion or facebook.com hire results. It's 3 p.m. Mountain Time every Tuesday. And if you happen to miss an episode, no worries. Go ahead and visit us at ipnow.tv or eye2eyeworkforce.com. And on eye2eyeworkforce.com, you can also do a download of the podcast. So if you want to just pay attention while you're driving, learn some new HR tools and tips, you can download that and put it on your phone. Thank you so much for being with us today, Kat. I really appreciate it. Great content, great information. And for all of you, thank you so much for being with us. And between here and there, we're wishing you higher results, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Melody.